integrative STEM education. My name is Dr. Rachel Geesa, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Krista Stith, and we're from Ball State University. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Educational Leadership at Ball State University, and Dr. Stith is the director of the Center for Gifted Studies and Talent Development at Ball State University. My educational background includes art, STEM, and educational leadership, while Dr. Stith's educational background includes integrative STEM, curriculum studies, and gifted studies. So we've joined forces to consider and discuss what leadership qualities leaders need in order to drive robust integrative STEM programs. In this presentation, we're going to discuss a variety of different responsibilities that educational leaders need to drive that integrative STEM program. And these responsibilities include innovational responsibilities, organizational responsibilities, instructional responsibilities, and social responsibilities. When we think about integrative STEM, STEM curricula is really designed to enhance students' capacities to identify and solve When we think about the college and career landscape, we focus on integrative STEM throughout the United States and the world. And here are some different examples of data to support this need for integrative STEM. In higher education right now, 18% of bachelor's degrees were awarded in STEM fields in 2016. In college degrees, 16.4 million jobs require bachelor's degrees or higher. When we think about job offers, there's a high demand for workforce from diverse backgrounds in STEM fields. For job selection, employers need employees who are STEM capable in multiple capacities. Again, we want folks to be able to communicate, collaborate, think critically, and be creative. For students, achievement in STEM disciplines varies, but should address content knowledge, skills, and attitudes in a variety of STEM capacities. And there is a need for STEM careers. 26 million jobs require STEM knowledge and skills. When we think about how to engage multiple stakeholders to build the buy-in that is needed for robust integrative STEM programs to occur, we have the educational innovators that come together. And those innovators include school and district level leaders, federal, state, and local governments, teachers, school counselors, other staff members within a school, and students, workforce agencies or local businesses and industries, and community partners at large.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So when we think about career and college readiness through integrative STEM, we really need to take a deeper dive into what exactly is integrative STEM and how does it differ from some of the other terms that we come across, such as STEM, STEAM, or even integrated STEM. So in this organizer here, what we're looking at is differentiating those different terms. So When we think about STEM or STEAM, this is a very intradisciplinary approach, the way that many of us experienced our K through 12 academic experiences. So for instance, in a science class, you learned about science. And then you may have walked across the hallway and you took a math class. So there was really not a lot of interconnection, a lot of bridging between what your science class was like and what your mathematics class was like. Same thing, after your math class, you then may go to a different room in the building and learn economics. And so with this intradisciplinary approach, all of these different disciplines are in a content silo. We do not have a lot of these meldings of these disciplines together. And so you may have a student that's very competent in mathematics or very competent in science, but it then is up to that student to find how they can start connecting these disciplines together to be career and college ready. So that's why we say that someone who may be very, have a high confidence level and is very masterful in their content, they would be content capable. So as we move further on this graphic organizer, we're going to come across integrated STEM. So in integrated STEM, we're going to have more of a multidisciplinary approach. So for instance, we may have an anatomy teacher who will be talking about the bones and joints of the body through physics. So we are talking about two distinct disciplines, but we are relating them together. So again, with multidisciplinary, we have two distinct disciplines, but we are able to start showing how they are connected. Interdisciplinary is going to be, again, more of a melding, more of a gray area between different disciplines. Lastly, what we try to get to in integrative STEM is really a transdisciplinary approach where we have a much more holistic exploration of these disciplines, and you don't really know where one discipline ends and the other begins. Because in a transdisciplinary approach, this is going to be the most real world, authentic experience that a STEM professional would experience. So thinking about the science of biotechnology, a biotechnologist never focuses on just science. They still have to be able to read well, to write well, to communicate their ideas. If they have talent in design, that can be very helpful. They have to be wonderful in math as well to make sure that the data that they're observing is going to be accurate in their results. So thinking about even just a biotechnologist, they really need to be able to pick and choose from all of these different disciplines to be impactful in their profession. So that's why we feel that integrative STEM is really a great way to start having students think and do as a STEM professional to best position them to be successful in their professional work. So in creating transdisciplinary experiences for students, this is, again, not something that many of us came across in our own academic programs growing up. So there are some challenges when you think about integrative STEM at the organization level. So not only are teachers implementing this at the classroom level, but the educational leader has to think about at the organization, the school level, or the district level, how to be able to start bringing in those integrative STEM characteristics. So some challenges to think about, and this is from personal experience with Rachel and I working with different K through 12 schools, but also in the literature as well. These are very well documented challenges. First and foremost, scheduling. A really big, important piece of integrative STEM is collaboration. Collaboration amongst students, collaboration amongst teachers, collaboration amongst community partners. And so simply finding the time in very busy schedules can certainly be a significant challenge. Thinking about the resources as well. If we're asking students to think and do critically and creatively like STEM professionals, they need to have the resources to do so. So where is the funding available for the infrastructure? Where is the funding for the curricula? The funding for instruments, materials, supplies for integrative STEM environments? Next, we have stakeholder buy-in. So again, since this is not an approach that many of us have experienced, getting buy-in from teachers, from parents, from school board, from politicians, you really need to make sure that the environment that integrative STEM is being introduced to has that support. Because if you do not have support from various stakeholders, this is going to be a significant challenge to move that program forward. Another challenge is going to be teacher training. So many pre-service teacher preparation programs may not necessarily be introducing the transdisciplinary approach to their students. So thinking about the professional learning opportunities for teachers to learn how to implement project-based learning, design-based learning, scientific inquiry, problem-based instructions. Do the teachers have these tools as far as their pedagogical approaches, or do they have the training for literal tools that they would be able to use in a makerspace or in their classroom? So those are certainly some things to think about. How are the teachers going to be able to have the time, the resources, the buy-in, and the training to be able to implement integrative STEM in the classroom? Another thing to think about are the mandates. So of course, local and state expectations are there. Standards must be met in both STEM and non-STEM disciplines. And so how can integrative STEM be interwoven throughout the organization that these mandates are still met? And then lastly, equity. So ensuring that all students have the ability to be able to experience integrative STEM instead of just certain populations within the entire school system.
Thank you, Krista. Now that we've had a nice overview of what integrative STEM should look like and can look like in schools, and we recognize the challenges, we can now talk about the responsibilities that leaders can have in developing and sustaining robust integrative STEM programs. So again, we're focused on innovational responsibility, organizational responsibility, instructional responsibility, and social responsibility. And we're going to talk about each of those different types of responsibilities in the upcoming slides. So when we think about organizational responsibility, these are responsibilities that school leaders have in thinking about mission and culture, infrastructure, professional learning, and evaluation. When we're thinking about the mission and culture, educational leaders need to strive to develop a strong leadership team in developing a positive learning environment for all students to engage in integrative STEM activities. And this should be the mission within the school. So you need a strong mission statement that focuses on integrative STEM and career and college readiness, and developing that school-wide culture where all students feel like they can be successful in integrative STEM practices. When we think about infrastructure, the space, the resources, and the time that educators and students have to engage in integrative STEM learning is critical. So folks need time for collaboration, creative thinking, and critical thinking, and communication, and thinking about what is needed in a robust integrative STEM facility and space. When we think about professional learning, that's really ongoing. Educators need to have voice and choice in what they need in terms of professional learning for integrative STEM. Some folks may be very knowledgeable in STEM fields, and others may need some ideas and ways of how to better integrate STEM throughout programs and curriculum. And within evaluation, educational leaders are responsible for evaluating programs, educators, and school-wide policies and programs in place. So that should be focused on throughout. There should be multiple different types of evaluation to focus on continuous school improvement. When we think about innovational responsibilities for educational leaders, these responsibilities focus on creative thinking, problem solving, entrepreneurialism, and collaboration. So educators need to provide ways for, or educational leaders need to provide ways for educators to collaborate and think creatively with community partners, parents, caregivers, and students. Problem solving is critical. We want to encourage students and educators to identify real world problems to solve. So the learning experience is focused on authentic problems that the students are working to solve. Within entrepreneurialism, we want educators, families, community partners, and students to come together and collaborate to promote innovation and teamwork. And within collaboration, I think this is one of the most critical skills. We need teachers, community stakeholders, students, and fellow educators to come together in order to share ideas, solve problems, think creatively, and be entrepreneurial in their work in the school. Within instructional responsibility, we focus on curriculum, instruction, assessment, and programming. Within curricula, we want curriculum that is timely, relevant, and aligned with educational standards, of course, but we want to make sure that it is integrative as well. So educators need time again to communicate and collaborate to think about ways to bring in those STEM fields into various areas of curriculum. Within instruction, there are multiple ways to provide meaningful instruction with integrative STEM, and co-teaching is a great way to allow teachers to come together, share ideas, share knowledge and expertise, and show students that they can collaborate in different subject areas and content. Within assessment, we promote formative assessment, summative assessment, and performance assessments are critical throughout integrative STEM programming. So educational leaders need to promote and support educators in using multiple forms of assessment in their programs. And when we think about programming, there should be multiple ways to integrate STEM learning throughout multiple disciplines throughout the school day. So there should be STEM programs that students can engage in, STEM courses, and other learning opportunities, whether they're after school, before school, or in the summer for students. When we think about social responsibility, educational leaders must focus on equity and inclusion, community engagement, stakeholder involvement, and extended learning. As Krista mentioned before, we want to ensure that all students are ready to work in STEM fields and feel confident and capable in those areas. All students need these STEM learning opportunities. Within community engagement, we want to bring in community partners and business partners to build sustainable, ongoing partnerships that are mutually beneficial. Within stakeholder engagement, which goes along with community engagement, we want stakeholders, parents, caregivers, community members, and industry partners to be a part of a STEM leadership team to promote integrative STEM and make meaningful decisions. And within extended learning, there should be multiple opportunities for students to experience STEM learning that could happen before school, after school, in clubs, or in the summer or during breaks for students. And those opportunities should be equitable and include all students.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So as we're thinking about interweaving integrative STEM at the school or district level, what are some ways we can think about approaching an action plan and having these strategies that have been shown to be successful in other schools? How can we incorporate them into the context of my own program? So one approach to be able to think about creating an action plan is the design thinking model, which is often credited towards the Stanford D School and its creation. So the design thinking model is very similar to other models out there where there is a problem solver who is going through a process to solve a problem for an end user. So for example, a student who is solving a problem of opening a door for someone that may not have functionality in their upper extremities. So that student would go through a process of thinking about that end user and what steps they would go through to try to solve this problem. And we can incorporate the design thinking model when we think about integrative STEM and how it will be brought into the culture, mission, infrastructure, learning environments of a school. So the steps of the design thinking process, the first step is empathy. You have to think about the stakeholders. You have to think about what are the needs of the students to be able to implement something like this? What are the needs of the teachers? What are the needs of the educational leaders? What are the needs of the support staff, the parents, the community? So getting that empathy, that buy-in to solve these needs for the end users is really that first step of the design thinking model. And it's why it's so important of a foundation to be able to think about the needs of these end users. The next step is going to be defining the problem. This is what I'm going to solve. This is what my team is going to try to solve for the end users, those stakeholders that we just talked about. So once the problem is defined, such as bringing integrative STEM into this school, then we have the ideate stage. And ideate really means to brainstorm. So brainstorming different strategies, potential solutions to solve this problem of incorporating integrative STEM into a school. So from there, once those ideations are created, we have potential strategies to use. We then develop a prototype. And so with this prototype, it may not necessarily be long-lasting program change. It's a test. It's a way for us to see if it could potentially work. And if issues are found, we can then go back to the ideate phase and think about new strategies or ways that we can address the problems and come up with new solutions. So prototyping and testing, this is not going to be a completely linear process. When you're trying to incorporate something into this school programming, you may have to go back and ideate the stage again. So it's an iterative process. It's more of a circular model than a linear model here. So when we are thinking about brainstorming or that ideate stage of the design thinking model, a model that's often incorporated in schools, and so many of your teachers may be using this, is called the Scamper model. And with the Scamper model, what you're doing is you're thinking about a solution, potential solution to the end to this problem, and you may substitute one solution for another, may replace a piece of it with something else. You can combine your solution with another solution. You can adapt a potential solution. You can modify, magnify, or minify a potential solution. You can use a solution that you had and use it in a different context. You can eliminate part of that solution, or you can rearrange or reverse that potential solution. So really, when you're going through that brainstorming phase, oftentimes the first solution in your head may not necessarily be, quote unquote, the best solution. You may have to sit and tinker with that solution. And so Scamper is a way to think about that solution in different ways, and thinking about it in different ways may catalyze new solutions that may work better in the context of your program. So in summary, thinking about integrative STEM education and as an educational leader, how might we be able to incorporate integrative STEM at the organization level? Some things that we would like you to take home with you. Leaders and educators should foster flexible learning environments that encourage risk and innovation. When we are thinking about project-based learning, problem-based learning, scientific inquiry, oftentimes when you first attempt this, it's not going to go well, and that's okay. It's a bit of a paradigm shift from the educational field, where oftentimes as the teacher, you feel like you should know everything and everything needs to be going according to plan. In integrative STEM, it's a lot messier than that. And so if things don't necessarily go the way as planned, that flexible learning environment is going to be supporting those educators and supporting the students. That if things don't go necessarily the way they're expected to go, when you're solving problems, when you're thinking and doing as a STEM professional, that's okay. Number two, learning should not be in content silos. Project-based, design-based, problem-based learning can be very supportive of integrative STEM. So again, when we think about that biotechnologist is not simply working in the biotechnology space. They're using biology, of course, they're using equipment, technology, they're using engineering to design a solution to understand the biological world that we live in and how can we use biology to solve problems. But they're also going to be using their language arts background, their communications background, a math background. So thinking about those content silos, you need as a STEM professional to be able to pick strengths from different disciplines. And project-based learning and these other approaches to learning are really, really great facilitators to allow that to happen. And lastly, collaboration. And as Rachel said, that collaboration piece is so important. You have to have collaboration not only with the teachers and the students, but also those external stakeholders as well, like parents, community leaders, other educational leaders, government officials. You have to have that buy-in, and you have to have this ecosystem of people working together to move the school forward in integrative STEM. So if you're interested in what Rachel and I have been talking about today, we actually have a book coming out in a couple of months. The title is Leadership in Integrative STEM. And Rachel, myself are the editors. We also have a colleague, Dr. Annette Rose, who is also editor. And in the 10 chapters of this book, we really go through each of these domains that we talked about in greater detail. So for instance, we talk about mission and culture. We talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion in integrative STEM. We talk about professional learning, infrastructure, extended learning, evaluation, assessment. So please look out for this book, Leadership in Integrative STEM. And in creating this book, Rachel, Annette, and I really went across the US and looked at what were the strategies that educational leaders of successful and impactful integrative STEM programs did. How did they navigate the challenges that we talked about earlier, such as scheduling and teacher professional learning, to be able to have an end product, an artifact, a school that has done a very successful, well done job in interweaving integrative STEM throughout the entire school ecosystem. So lastly, again, we have Dr. Rachel Geesa and myself, Dr. Krista Stith from Ball State University. We have our contact information. We welcome emails to let us know how we did and if you have any additional questions. Thank you.